You know, a snow day in New York City, it seems so simple, right? Kids get the day off, everything looks beautiful, all covered in white. But what if I told you that behind that perfect scene, there's a whole story about weird weather, forgotten history, and a crazy economic paradox that cost the city millions? Yeah, let's dig into the real story behind the snow.
Okay, so picture this. It's December 27th, 2025. That quiet time right after Christmas has settled over New York, and the city's waking up to this fresh blanket of snow. For a lot of people, it's just a beautiful classic winter morning.
And the official number, the measurement from Central Park came in at 4.3 inches.
Now, I know what you're thinking. 4.3 inches? That's not exactly a blizzard. But here's the thing. Context is everything. This was the most snow the city had gotten from a single storm in almost 4 years. So yeah, for New Yorkers, this felt like a really big deal.
But this storm, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was actually just one piece of a much larger, much more intense winter season that was playing out all across North America.
I mean, just look at this timeline. You can see the pattern. This whole season was just relentless. It kicked off with a huge Thanksgiving blizzard in the Midwest, then a bomb cyclone, then another big storm. The reason for all this chaos, a weak La Niña, which is a climate pattern that cools down the Pacific and tends to make our winters, well, a lot wilder. So New York's snow day wasn't some fluke, it was just the city's turn.
So if the entire country was getting hammered all winter, why did just 4 inches feel so important in New York City? Well, the answer is in what happened right before this, a strange period that some people started calling the Great Snow Drought.
As The Guardian pointed out back in 2023, the city had just gone through the longest stretch without any measurable snow in its entire recorded history. It even broke a 50-year-old record for the latest first snowfall of the season.
And these numbers really tell the story. The entire winter of 2022 to 23, the city got a grand total of 2.3 inches. The next year, just 7.5. Now compare that to the historical average, which is almost 36 inches a year. You can see why people felt like they were living in a snow desert.
But to really get a sense of how weird this modern drought has been, we have to zoom way, way out and look at New York's winters over the last 150 years.
Okay, first, a quick little definition that's pretty important. When you hear meteorologists talk about winter, they're usually talking about what's called meteorological winter. That's December, January, and February. They use those 3 months just to keep all the historical records consistent.
All right, now look at the all-time highs. The winter of 95-96 dumped over 75 inches of snow. Even way back in the 1870s, they were getting over 60 inches. It makes those recent winters with just 2 or 7 inches feel like they're from a completely different planet.
So we've got this really fascinating weather story playing out over decades. But all this snow, or the lack of it, has a very real and very expensive impact right down on the city streets. Getting those streets cleared is this massive logistical puzzle. So the huge question is, what does that actually cost?
For years, you've probably heard the old rule of thumb. Even the NYC Comptroller's office has cited it. It costs the city about $1 million for every single inch of snow that has to be cleared.
But it turns out that simple math is just not right. The real data tells a much more complicated and honestly a much weirder story.
Okay, get ready for this, because it sounds completely backwards. In a year with very little snow, the cost per inch shot up to a mind-boggling $4.4 million. But in a really heavy snow year, the cost dropped to less than $750,000 an inch. Yeah, you heard me right. The less it snows, the more expensive each inch is to clean up. How is that even possible?
Well, it all boils down to 2 things: fixed costs and economies of scale. Think about it. Whether a storm is going to drop 1 inch or 10 inches, the Department of Sanitation has to do the same prep work. They have to get their huge workforce ready for 12-hour shifts. They have to move over 3,000 pieces of heavy machinery into position. They have to pre-salt thousands of miles of roads. All of that prep costs a fortune. So if the storm ends up being tiny, you spent all that money just to clear a little bit of snow. But once that whole massive operation is up and running, clearing each extra inch of snow becomes way more efficient and a whole lot cheaper.
So you see, the story of a New York City snow day is never, ever just about the weather. It's a story that starts with a single, tiny snowflake,
Gets shaped by these huge global weather patterns.
and it ends with this totally counterintuitive, multi-million-dollar price tag for the city.
And all of this leaves us with a really important question. As our climate keeps changing and our winters get more and more unpredictable, swinging from droughts to blizzards. What other hidden costs are out there, just waiting to be uncovered by the next storm?